Hello and welcome to the final West London Sport QPR podcast for the 2022-23 season. Well, like many things in life, the words of the Smiths had great resonance on Monday for all of us associated with QPR after a record 12 home defeat. I know it's over, still I cling, I don't know where else I can go. Yes, it really has been a truly awful season. I'm joined as ever by Kevin Gallen and once again by sports venue event specialist Jim Frayling, formerly of QPR and the FA, who's here to impart us with some wise words on off-the-field matters. Well, we're all put out of our misery on Monday as a mediocre, at best, Bristol City side, who were pulled to pieces by QPR at Ashton Gate last September, cruised to an easy 2-0 win. After victories at Burnley and Stoke, where possession stats were around 20%, it was a real test of what Gareth Ainsworth would do in the final home game of the season, with the club's championship status secured. But almost predictably, he went 4-4-2 with Lyndon Dykes and Chris Martin up front. Ilias Chair shoved out in the left wing, Albert Doma on the right. City's 4-2-3-1 formation having a few difficulties in overrunning QPR's midfield duo of Sandfield and Luke Amos. It was the seventh home match since Gaines took over from Neil Critchley in February, and they've yielded just 2 goals, 1 win and 5 defeats. Now, the QPR boss has talked incessantly about building the team he wants for next season. But Kevin, given he was brought in, believe it or not, because the club's owners wanted to try and get the playoff push back on track, has he done enough to deserve the chance to, rebuild in the summer?
It's a real good question. I think so, only because you can tell the players are not suited to the way Gareth wants to play. And I think it was a little bit of a missed opportunity on Monday where we set up 4-4-2, sitting deep and trying to play counter-attacking football. But then you've got a 34-year-old Chris Martin, who, let's be fair, he's done all right goals-wise, but hasn't got the legs to play counter-attack. Albert Adoma, 34, am I right? I don't know how old he is. Hasn't really got the legs anymore to go past people down on the right-hand side. And Ilias Chair, who's not a left midfielder, left winger, who's not going to go and outrun fullbacks and outsprint them on the counter-attack, who's more of a, we all know what he is. He's a number 10 technical player, wants to come in and play off the front and come in off the little left-hand side and get shots in off goal. So to play 4-4-2 with that personnel was very surprising for me. If you're going to play that sort of way, the counter-attacking way, you've got to go with a little bit more legs, a little bit more youth. And it sort of says to me that if we're going to play that way next season, then he has to clear the decks. He has to get some runners in the team. He has to get some more athleticism in the team, a bit more young, a bit more pace. And we don't know what is going on behind the scenes with his discussions with the people that matter money-wise and what kind of players that he has identified to come in. But the jury's definitely still out. We were 8 points clear when Gareth took over. And, I think Reading would have finished above us on goal difference, and they got 6 points deduction, and Cardiff would have been relegated, and we would have stayed up by 1 point. So I think the jury's still out. He's got a lot to do. He's got a lot to do to convince the majority of the QPR fans that he's the man for the job. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what recruitment comes in the next 2 or 3 months for me.
Now, Jim, in the interest of research for this podcast today, I did frequent a few hostelries on Monday, and I don't think I've ever met such a groundswell of opinion that really doesn't want Gareth Ainsworth as manager. Very confused about what he wants to do, and very sort of nonplussed about the style of football. Every manager dreams of having a pre-season and a full chance to clear the decks and start again. Where do you stand on it? Do you think that should be the case?
No, I think it's understandable people are a bit hacked off with it. We've had a really horrible season, the way it's gone. And what came the 6 months, the half of the previous season wasn't that great either. So, we have reached that point as a fan base where people are starting to get hacked off. Albeit, I acknowledge Clive's point that that he said that people have been clapping the team off plenty at games, and certainly in my time at the club, we had a much more toxic atmosphere going when we did get relegated. So, I'd say that acknowledging that there's been support for the team, and I think it's the team who are the root cause of stuff that's gone wrong. As for Ainsworth, I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt in the sense of two things for me. Three things. He's earned it as a QPR man who loves QPR. Secondly, I cannot think of anyone who's inherited a worse situation at the club and come in. That the situation he came into post Beale, post Critchley was horrible. I mean, you could argue Ian Holloway did for his first managerial stint, but the die was kind of cast then. He could have kept us up, but it was pretty much written, I think, by that point. So I think he's inherited a horrific situation. I understand why people say they don't know his style, but I think he's tried to evolve away from his own style because he's recognised he's got to do a stopgap and he's got to just do whatever it takes to stay in the division, and he's done that now. But if you look at how it's evolved, from trying to do a high press or man-to-man press to going into a more counter-attacking style, yes, we don't have a defined style, but that's because he's just been trying to find anything that works. So I think it's a little bit harsh to say about him that he hasn't delivered a certain style or done it. He's tried 3 styles and he's ultimately alighted on one that got us 2 results and kept us up. So in the sense of that, he's kind of done the job. And it's much harder to turn a super tanker around than it is to start it going wrong, which is what Beale did and then Critchley continued. So I think he deserves an element of credit for that. It's not been pretty, and I think there's always been a lot of talk that we like passing football, and I do, and I know others do, but do we genuinely as a fan base? I think a lot of fans take winning over passing football, but I think, Warburton got the benefit of the doubt where he was trying, and I think Kev's point, about our players is spot on. They're not suited to... We traded they're not suited to 4-4-2 and outright 4-4-2. We've kind of been buying cheap, so we've had to compromise on stuff. And I think that's been whether it's someone like Ilias Chair with his height, he's actually quite quick, Chair off the mark, but not out and out gas, that you'd say. But or injury records with people. So Sam Fields really worked out because he stayed fit, but he's one of the few players we've got with an athleticism about him because we've recruited. We haven't been able to recruit pace because pace costs money in the transfer market, and we haven't had enough money. So I think Kev's right. There's a massive tension between what our squad can do right now and what Ainsworth's system at Wickham suits. And the big question mark is, can he evolve? What can he do? We've seen suggestions with set pieces that they've done elsewhere that they're a smart bunch and there's more to them than just hoofball. But the real question is, can he evolve and can he offer something more than he does right now?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you do whatever works. I understand that. My issue on Monday was that they've offered a contract to Chris Martin. Chris Martin was brought in as a stopgap for when Lyndon Dykes has got pneumonia. He wasn't brought in to play up front with Lyndon Dykes, and is that what he wants to do next season? I mean, that's warning signs all over it. Because I understand he wants leaders in there. I understand he wants characters and people that talk. Yeah, of course, that does make sense. But I just think that if you're going to use Chris Martin, you use him off the bench. You don't start him in a game when you've got a chance to have a look at players. Especially when you've got people like Chris Willock on the bench. He doesn't obviously rate Chris Willock. He doesn't want to play Stefan Johansson. As I say, for me, I've mentioned it last week. I covered that game at Ashton Gate, and QPR absolutely ripped Bristol City to bits. All of those players, bar 2, were available to play on Saturday, and they just pulled them apart by pace and movement and a front 3. Stefan Johansson pulling the strings, and you watch what that was on Monday. It was like chalk and cheese. And then he's coming out and saying things like, well, Bristol City are a team that, they like to catch you on the counter-attack, etc. Well, surely you're at home. You have a go at them, sit back and let them come on to you, just because you got a lucky win at Burnley and you played against a Stoke team that are, sitting on deck chairs. That's where I stand on it. But Yeah,
it's a big flag, Martin. It's a massive red flag as a warning to us. I think it always, with any contract stuff, it depends what they're on. Players don't tend to earn less and less and less, but he might be taking a reasonably low salary. In which case, maybe it is low risk. Maybe it is about the ethos. Maybe it is about getting the changing room right and having a few generals. Because like the one thing we had when we recovered from being relegated, when Kevin came back to the club, we had enough people who were fans, and we had a bunch of people who were leaders, and we lack a spine, and we don't even talk to the ref. We just lack anything about us. Especially since Austin went. But that's why Austin and Johansson and Device were very important when they came in, because they gave us a bit of backbone. But we're far too nice. So I can see why Martin's attracted to him, but it's a worry, because Bristol City have got rid of him to allow their kids to develop.
I mean, what was sort of a worry for me as well is, I think Bristol City had like 5 players from their academy playing or so. Have one. I think we had one on the bench, Dixon Bonner. Am I right in saying he was signed from?
Yeah, he's
signing.
He didn't even come on.
Yeah, so I just thought it was a free hit for us. It's a free hit for us, and we could have played maybe a more younger team, and maybe it's sort of a team that you think, I don't know. Well, maybe that's what he did, a team for next season. I don't know. But I just was sort of baffled by it. And the games, I didn't go to the games, but obviously with the percentage of 20%, we're playing at home and we're just getting overrun in midfield. And I said it here about 2 or 3 weeks ago, especially after the Coventry game, where we're just getting dominated in midfield. And eventually, you cannot win games on a regular basis with 20% of possession. I mean, it's never been done before. It can't happen. You might get lucky, which I think we did. I weren't there, but we obviously was very lucky against Burnley. I wasn't there, but my mates were there, and they said, yeah, we were very. I mean, but to win matches and to concede possession constantly, you're either going to try one thing. You've got 2 things you're going to do: counter-attack and try and win football matches on set pieces. That's the only way that will work. Winning games on a real lack of possession, and especially at home in the last game of the season, you think, and we did start all right for the first 10, 15, and then I just thought to myself, and there was a little bit against like Coventry where we started quite brightly, and I sat next to my son and my mate, and I said, if we don't get a goal now, they'll take over and dominate. I wish they did. And let's be fair, that Bristol City, what are they, mid-table team?
Nothing special.
Yeah, nothing special. And you talked about it 5 minutes ago, how we actually played them off the park at their ground. So nothing special. It's just, thank God we stayed up and the season's ended. And like I just said a bit before, it's going to be a big summer with incomings and outgoings, and it has to be right. It has to get it right, because if we don't get this recruitment right, we're going to be in for a tough season next season, I think. It's so important. I've talked about this for 3 years. Got to get your recruitment right. We need some centre forwards. We need some fullbacks. We need some energy in midfield. Are we going to go down the loan route as much as we did last season? I think we will go and get 2 or 3. We won't go and get 4 or 5 and then stuck with them at January when we actually needed some. So they might have to hold back, or maybe get some with an option till January, and then an option for the rest of the season, where instead of a whole year loan. So that's a lesson learned as well.
Yeah, I think. Well, one recruitment that was announced today, that was Taylor Richards, who's signed a 3-year deal. That was a loan with an option to buy that was inserted when he arrived at the club last summer. I mean, you look at that and think he's hardly a Ainsworth type player, is he? But he's a talent. I mean, he's someone that really hasn't shone at all this season because he's not been fit. So he's got to be an option. You've got to now just get him fit, and so when he comes back next season, gives you a forward option at least. But for me, I think Strikers, yeah, hugely important. But he's got to sort of defence out. I mean, this is an issue he's inherited. I mean, Mark Warburton never really got that right defensively, and he's just shipping too many goals. I mean, it's ludicrous. I think it's over 70 goals they've let in this season, and 2 terrible goals to concede again against Bristol City. Now, I don't put this in Ainsworth, put the blame at Ainsworth foot for this one, but you'd have to think that he's going to be looking at 1, maybe 2 centre backs in the window. I mean, Connor Marston's now officially gone. He's gone to time for Gillingham today. You've got Dickey and Dunn. Balogun's been released, so you'd think there's going to be at least 2, maybe 3 centre backs coming in. I mean, it is needed.
Don't forget Jake Clark's also.
Of course, Jake Clark's also. Yes, I mean, easy to forget. He's played sort of less games than Luke Amos, I think, and he was released today. So we'll touch on him in a moment. But yeah, I mean, that you build from the back. That's how it works, isn't it, Kevin?
Well, yeah, that's what the old days is. You get solid at the back. We have conceded a hell of a lot of goals. Be interesting to see if the keeper stays. If there are any offers for him, or do they want him to stay because he hasn't had the best of seasons. But definitely needs a couple of fullbacks, another centre half, because, like you said, Jake Clark sort of just always injured. What's going to happen with Balogun?
He's been released today.
Pardon?
Balogun's been released today.
Okay, so he's been released. So there's a massive rebuild there, and it'd be interesting to see what the finances are. Is it going to be free transfers? Are they going to sell Willock, maybe Chair, Dieng, to get some money in to then reinvest in the squad? I mean, I think the only time in the last 6 months, or in January, the only offer that I heard was for Lyndon Dykes from Millwall. Has there been any offers for any of the other players?
No, I believe there's been links with Dieng going over to France to join. I think it's Reims.
Okay,
Reims. It's Reims.
Is it? No, not Rennes. Reims.
No, it's pronounced Reims. It's the Champagne country.
Hey,
don't worry.
Only you would know that, Jim.
Yeah, exactly. We just drink lager and Guinness. He drinks champagne. We're in the wrong job,
I don't drink champagne either, but I just know it's pronounced Reims. But
Okay.
every transfer window that comes up, his agent links him somewhere. So I'd love.
This is true.
So, Jim, what is going to happen? Are we going to sell to reinvest, or what
We
money?
have to.
It's a massive summer. It really is
We
so.
just lost 24 million quid. We've got any reasonable offer that comes in, we're selling. We've got to make about 10 million quid, I think, to stay within FFP. And we haven't got 10 million quid's worth of players after the season we've had. So we're, any reasonable offer that comes in for any of our players. And the trouble is, you look at the value of Willock this time last year compared to this time now, it's gone down a lot, hasn't it? Like of the season we saw, the player we saw up till October versus the player we've got now, it's you scrub a naught off, don't you? So I think they'll take any realistic offer that comes in, and probably even a slightly low one. But you look at it and you say, well, who are the players that will attract a fee? Anyone offers you money for Dieng, you take it, because you've got Arch, who's not a massive downgrade, and you can try and get a keeper in. We're not going to get offered money for Dickey. So where's the offer's going to come in? Field is probably our best player and our best asset.
When you're talking about transfer fees, the whole thing depends on how long these players have got left on their contract. Now, if you've got 3 years left on your contract, your price is. If you've got 1 year, your prices goes down, and then once you get to, and if the player says, "I don't want to leave," and then it gets to 6 months, it becomes a Osei Samuel type thing where we only get 300 grand.
Yeah.
So these players,
not going for anything.
These players with 1 year on a contract, they're going to have to make a decision. Are we going to cash in right now or lose them for nothing at the end of next season?
Yeah. Well, I know that Field's got 2 years, a year and another year. Chair's got another 2 years.
To be fair to Field, look, I don't think you'd get much money for Field. I might be wrong here, but
yeah,
he's a holding centre midfielder. He's been our player of the year. He's done really well. But I mean, there's a lot of that type of player around at other clubs in the Championship. And I don't think a Premiership team is going to come in for Field. No disrespect.
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying we've got very few assets to sell, and this is the problem with Ainsworth, where on the plus side of his account, you can say, well, he played a good role in developing Eze, who then went for good money, right? But on the flip side, if he's going to play that way, it makes our players less attractive to Premier League clubs, who are the only people with money. Yeah, it's Premier League clubs and daft Championship clubs who still got parachute payments, and even then, most of them prefer to shop abroad. So the arse has fallen out of the Championship transfer market. So you've got to sell to the Premier League, but are you going to sell for a premium if you're playing a long ball style of football?
No.
So, and how therefore does Ainsworth fit the model of what we've been doing? Has our model worked? Yes, when we sold Easy that season, but you need to sell him every other year. And Willock should have been the next one, but it's all fallen apart. So Ainsworth needs to evolve to meet that model, and that model needs to evolve to kind of meet Ainsworth. But we're kind of in a big compromise situation, and that's why I think there's a lot of uncertainty, because no one knows hands on heart if that's going to work. The only real assets we've got now are Chair, and Chair's not. His decision making and his out and out pace are what needs to improve to get a real premium for him. I'm a big fan of his. I really like the way he plays, but I think he doesn't back his own pace. He's actually quite quick off the mark, and you've seen it when he really does run. He's all right, but for some reason he's not confident in his own pace. But he's a player that could go for money as opposed to a defensive midfielder like Field, who has got a limited value. And look, ultimately, strikers go for the most money, so we need Dykes to get a hatful next year. But we're just in that really awkward place where we had a model under Warburton and Beale and Critchley. That model has gone. We've changed it. So can Ainsworth fit that model and evolve or not? And no one knows. Like I could give you my answer, but the truth is none of us know, and I doubt even if he knows.
Yeah, I think there's with Chair, what you say, I agree with what you say. I think you're looking at clubs that are coming down. Still your Watfords.
Abroad, Ian, no? Abroad?
Yeah, possibly.
But Chair must be thinking, I've got 2 years left. I can't play left midfield.
Yeah.
He'll be speaking to his agent. He will be saying, I can't play left midfield. I'm not a left midfield player. My stock if I play left midfield, my stock's going to go down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like when you're a football player, and it's a bit selfish, and we all know football players, it's sort of like your own company. It's like Ilias Chair Limited, Kevin Gallen Limited. It's like it's your career. It's your business.
But this again. When McBeal joined in the summer, we all said, "Oh yeah, it's joined up thinking." It makes sense. He comes in. This is his background, the way he spoke, what have you, what he wanted to do. It made sense. And Critchley, to a degree, it made sense. He was the wrong personality for the job, and I feel a bit sorry for him actually. He just didn't have the players available to him at the time. And then you bring in Gareth Ainsworth, and you just go, well, there's no joined up thinking there. That's just like he's someone who played for QPR and spent 11 years at Wickham, and was a caretaker manager. But that seems to be the kind of the reasoning for getting him in.
The model's completely changed from what it has been since Warburton, where let's play a certain brand of football. Let's try and develop a younger player, whether he comes from, another club, Willock, Eze, Chair comes from, and let's try and develop them and make them better and play them and try and sell them on. It's all gone out the window now, and now it seems that the whole model is for next season's survival.
Yeah, they did get a few quid in for Beale. And they also got a few quid in for the World Cup players that played in the World Cup and what they got. So, the FFP reading wasn't great last year, but you throw in the cost of the training ground and stuff like that. There are mitigating reasons for it. But if you can, I think you're looking really like see Sheffield United's. Ipswich, they're throwing money around like no tomorrow coming up. They might be interested in, a splash signing like that. But then you go, someone like Willock. I feel a little bit sorry for him with Willock. No one could have envisaged Willock falling off the cliff like he has, the injuries. Same with Dickey. Start of the season, you'd have taken Dickey and said, yeah, he's one of the better defenders in the Championship. He's fallen off a cliff. Aside from that one game at Burnley where but it's been a really difficult year for him, and no one could have seen that. Les Ferdinand, quite rightly, he's taken a lot of stick for certain decisions that are made, but I don't think anyone could have perceived that. But the decision to appoint Ainsworth was by Amit Bhatia. It was his decision.
Was it?
Yeah, it was a decision taken by the owners. They wanted him in. It was a very similar situation to Fernandez wanting to get Steve McClaren in. He was an itch. He's been dying to scratch for ages. Get Gareth in. I like Gareth. That was the decision that was made. So that's where we are basically. But just
there's a way that model works, Ian, is that if you recruit players with large athleticism but a bit rough around the edges, play a pretty basic style of football, focused on getting the ball forward quick, having a lot of legs in your midfield, closing people down, it can work. You run it more on a shoestring, because those players should be cheaper, because you can get the physicality if you're not buying skill. So, you're going to have more sort of like gangly legs in midfield type players who be honest and run all day for you, but cost a lot less. And then you might get a sort of cherry on top type player that really is the sort of the reverse of the grit and the oyster. It's like the one bit of skill that you have, the bit of luxury player that you can have if everyone else is working their nuts off. And that might be a model, but it doesn't feel like that's the conscious choice. And it's worth acknowledging that's the complete opposite end of what we've been trying to do for the last 4 years.
Jim, if we go down that, and that's the route sort of Luton have gone down, hard work, direct. But the one difference that Luton have, and I watched the Luton v QPR v Luton at Christmas. In our squad, we had one striker. In their squad, they're 11 and subs, they had 5.
Yeah.
We've still, other than Chris Martin, I don't know if he's staying, we've got one, Lyndon Dykes. Now, to go down that route, that's okay. But we need to get some strikers in. And what Luton did, they got Carlton Morris in, they got Corley Woodrow in, they got Elijah.
Adebayo.
Yeah, him. Some good striker and can play that way.
And they got legs.
Yeah, and they got legs in midfield and they run. I don't want to talk about them, but if you're going to go down, that's the way they've gone about it. Very direct, ball in the box, aggressive, running. But they got strikers. We haven't. We've been talking on this podcast. Well, I have been banging on it on this podcast for 2-3 years. We need centre forwards.
Yeah.
And Neil Warnock was all he used to do was buy centre forwards, whatever club he was at. Always. Remember when he used to, like at Sheffield United, he never used to have a sub goalkeeper, put an extra striker on the bench. We are desperate for centre forwards at QPR. Desperate.
I mean, I'm not. It's not I'm opposed to long ball or direct football or whatever. You do what you can. I mean, there's numerous clubs that play that way, but then I wouldn't say that. I mean, Coventry to a degree are quite direct. They're very, very focused on Yorkers up front. But you can make direct football entertaining and attacking, and it can be done. It's not saying it shouldn't happen. What my worry is, are you going to use Chris Martin as a battering ram centre forward? Because
he doesn't fit
very
that model.
different that's very different to just being direct and mobile.
Chris Martin doesn't win headers and flick it on. Chris Martin is below the chin, neck, into his chest, hold it up, runners off him. But we're not doing that. We're knocking it long. The Dykes to flick on for Chris Martin to run on to his flick ons. It doesn't make sense.
And that's the thing as well. Like those Luton strikers you mentioned, they're all mobile. They're big. They're big units, but they can shift, and they can. Chris Martin. He certainly do. What he can do is be effective in certain parts of the field, but moving isn't one of his strong points. Let's be frank about it.
I'm not saying we should do that. I'm not saying we are doing that. And Chris Martin contract discussion suggests we're not. But I'm just suggesting that might be. We'll see it in the signings if that's what we're going to do. But that might be what they're looking at. I think personally, you've got to stay the course with what we were doing. And do it better. I don't think there was a lot wrong with the plan we were trying to do. It was the execution of it that was poor. And I think Beale was the right manager at the time for I say that knowing how it's worked out with him leaving.
I think Critchley had the right idea looking back didn't have sort of the personality.
Correct. And look, you saw at Villa what happened when Critchley followed Beale, and yet we repeated that. So I think it was the right template of manager, and I see why we're attracted to him, because he's available on a free when we needed a bigger character than that.
Mm.
You know, when we as a club, I always feel we do need a big character. But I think the other thing we need to focus on, we talk about Ainsworth's future at the start of this, but like we've got the players who have at various times dialed it in under 4 different managers. Warburton had shocking runs. Beale was starting to have one. Critchley had a shocking run. Ainsworth has had to put up with it. So actually, wiping the slate clean with a lot of them is needed, because they've been dragging everyone else down. And the trouble is, because that has been allowed to happen, and because we've had too many loans, they have dragged down players like Dickey and Willock that we know are better, that we were relying on to sell. So, we've done 3 things really badly recently. Critchley was the right choice at the wrong time. And in getting rid of him, by the way, we've said to the players, you matter more than the managers ever will. So that's another reason why I don't particularly want to change now, because it's saying, oh, look, the manager's the problem again. And it's not the managers, really, it's the players. So, we got too many loans in. We got Critchley in at the wrong time. And we have allowed too many players to fester and have the wrong culture at the club. And we need to be better at rooting out any wrong-uns. And the Preston North End manager, the Preston North End manager was quoted on fun things that thread saying, I don't recruit knobheads. Fair enough. The All Blacks, who are written up in management guides because everyone loves rugby and they all, talk management strategy rubbish about it all. But they had a no dickheads policy. It is important not to have characters around the dressing room who stop the good ones from being team players. You need to have people who are not dickheads.
Another thing, and you just said there, Jim, we're talking about the start about Ainsworth's future. The last 4 managers had no help from the academy, from players coming through the academy. The last 4 managers. I mean, they played on Tuesday, and I'm looking on the thing, they lost 5-1 at home to Wigan B. I mean, what's going on?
So one of the big fallouts with Warburton was meant to be that he didn't think that we had any players worth bringing through.
Well, either did Beale, and neither did Critchley, and now Ainsworth hasn't, because you see the team on Monday, there wasn't any in there. And I've been banging on about this for years, about, we're talking about academy players. Where are they?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is hot air, isn't it? It's what these political signings have been made, contracts handed out to players that you have to fill for political reasons. I mean, I see again today, Stephen Duke McKenna's been offered a contract, and you ask the question, why? Yeah, today. So the release list today went out today, and it was players released with Luke Amos, Mide Shadipo, Leon Balogun, Charlie Owens, and Connor Masterson. Willock and Charlie Kelman had the final year taken up by the club, and have offered contracts to Dixon Bonner, Chris Martin, Aaron Drew, and Stephen Duke McKenna. So it's, I mean, sometimes you look at these guys and think, they're a bit on easy street. Shadipo and Owens and these type of characters got contracts year after year.
We don't know any more about Shadipo than we knew 3 or 4 years ago. And the trouble is, we've been ruthless with the wrong players, because we replaced Barbet with Jake Clark-Salter. But, Barbet probably not as good a player as him, but he made every game. And in a small squad, that sort of Steve Palmer type virtue of playing every game, even if you're not as good as another player. Matthew Rose was a more complete all-round player than Steve Palmer was, but Matthew Rose would give you 25 to 30 games of the season, and Palmer would give you 40 odd. And there's virtue in players being available, to deliver on what they're being paid. So you look at that and you say, well, that wasn't a great call, was it? So I think we've just gone slightly too far the wrong way with loans. We've gone slightly too far the wrong way with not rooting out bad behaviour. And I think we're paying the price for it again. And we've also, I think we took a punt too early, because the owners were so desperate to get the club back up there and have an asset that either they could sell or get back to the Premier League. But we were tilting at windmills too early with signing Johansson and Austin and Device permanently and Field. And look at those results, 24 million quid lost for that. And how far did it get us? To be fair, we had one calendar year where we had promotion form, but then 2022 was relegation form, and 2023 has continued where that left off. So I'd like to see us run a far leaner ship in future, because if you're going to err one way or the other, err on the side of caution and err on the side of having hungry players rather than players who are just turning it in. We need to get much harsher about running a small squad on limited money and keeping players hungry, because look, everyone looks at Millwall and what they're doing. They're still losing 10 million quid a year, but they're doing it with a wage bill that's 5-6 million lower than us. Are we really getting value for money for that 5 or 6 million?
No.
So what's the point? And are the board then, for their 2 million quid a month, are they getting enough in terms of an asset? What are they getting as an investment? They're getting a new training ground, and that's it. They're not developing the fan base. They're not developing Loftus Road. They're not developing the match day experience and offer. But that's okay. That's probably not the direction that the board are given the management team. So they're not doing it. But if you're investing 24 million quid a year in something, you want more to show for it than what you're getting right now.
Yeah. So we've got the, Jim, the kind of the thorny issue of season tickets. A worrying thing that I kind of sort of think the people on Monday was that sort of saying, well, if this is the style of football we're going to watch, I'm not sure I want to renew. How much does that sort of thing go into? You've been sort of privy to how clubs work in this sort of department, and you want to get people to buy season tickets, but style of play, or is it obviously the marketing campaign that you ran so successfully in your time there? What's the tough conversations have to be had. I don't think they put the prices up for a few years, but it's a bad year to be kind of thinking I've got to put the ticket prices up. This time.
Yeah, but they have to, because on the one hand they look at their costs, and the FD and the CEO will be looking at that and going, our energy costs are massively up, our stewarding costs are massively up, because you can't get stewarding staff as easily as you could before, because we've got real problems with labour supply. Someone like Pret, right, who recruit probably a better quality of staff than might be a steward, but there's some crossover. They've given their staff a 20% pay rise in the last year. So stewards' wages would have gone up. So match days have got more expensive. So they'll be looking at massive inflation in their cost base at the same time as thinking, well, we probably ought to put prices up a little bit. But the footballing context to that is it's the worst possible scenario where we've had 4 goals at the home end in front of the bulk of crowd all year, and 2 of those were penalties. We've won so few games at home we've won 1 game since October at home. So from a footballing perspective, there's no way on earth you should be putting the price. Who puts up the price of something that has been much, much worse than everyone's expectations? So from a marketing perspective, you should not be putting the price up. But from an overall perspective, their cost base will be massively up. Albeit, we lose 24 million quid a year, and 28 million quid of that is wages. So, and our gate receipts are about, these days are about a quarter of our income. So, should we be? You're better off, and this is my real point with the wage bill, is that you're better off cutting an average squad member and not putting season ticket prices up than you are keeping that squad member and putting season ticket prices up. Too often clubs do it the other way around and think, we've got to get the best possible product on the pitch, let's get 1 more player. And even in my time, that was like, you could say Jamie Curitan, where we took 50 grand of the fundraising money and then signed him and paid his wages. It's slightly, look, he did contribute to us and is sort of also proves Kev's point about having enough strikers at the club. But, we could have probably done without him, actually. And that money invested in the fan base over 5 years will go a lot further. But I don't think at the minute, they can't afford to put the prices up with how everyone's feeling, but they can't afford not to put the prices up. So I'm very glad I'm not the CEO.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. Well, we moved our season tickets, but I'm sitting when I'm not working, from the upper loft into G Block in the South Africa Road. So my 7-year-old has a better view of the game. We haven't seen a single goal scored at that end of the ground by QPR. It's nuts. I've never remember that. It's always we said my mate has got a phrase. We're always good for 2 at the loft, and it's been 4 goals all season. That's scandalous.
When I played and I was captain, I always was like, when I went up for the coin toss, it was always like, please don't turn us around.
Yeah.
You win that toss, please don't turn us around, because that's what I would do if I was the opposition team. Turn QPR around. I was like desperate to win the toss all the time.
Yeah,
and we've lost the most matches we've ever lost at home.
Yeah.
I mean,
12. It's the most in the club.
Just era-definingly bad, and yet they'll be looking at the numbers, going, "We've got to put the prices up."
I mean, I think if it's I think it's like a £15-20 increase. I think people will kind of reluctantly wear it, but I think if you're going to go up kind of 70-80 quid, that's a lot of money for people to be.
They're not good value anyway. I mean, quite aside from the product, but for most people, the thing that frustrates me with it is that we did the research years ago, and we worked out that season ticket holders were worth more to the club over the season because they came to more games and they spent more when they came because they'd already paid for their season ticket. But now I'm fairly typical. You know, I missed 2 games in August because I didn't know the fixtures when I booked my holiday. I always miss a game or 2 at Christmas because, you know, family comes first and we've got to go where family is. You know, and I just end up missing far more games than it's worth. You know, I'd save money not buying a season ticket because it's like it saves me 3 games. I know every year I'm going to miss 3 games. And I remember the research we did. It was like, on average, season ticket holders at that time came to about 15 games out of 23. You know, some more, but a lot on average about that. So we pitched the discount at that level because we rewarded loyalty. But now it's like 3 or 4 games max you can save. It's like you break even on it if you're lucky. It's just pointless.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up getting season tickets for the kids because it was just a damn sight easier than trying to navigate my way around the ticketing system they use on the website. But I will say, just in fairness, the QPR box office staff are truly fantastic, and whenever I've had any issues getting tickets, they've always been above and beyond. So, you know, it's not a big problem at all. They're really, really good and really.
When helpful. They are very good actually. And where it is good value, having canned it, you know, bringing my son for another 50 quid is brilliant. You know, I'm desperately trying to get him interested in Rangers, and it's like, it's not easy, you know, it really isn't. But the fan zone helps, bringing his mates helps, you know, and just the regularity of it helps. But that makes it much better value. So I then look at it and say, well, it's 2 of us for about 500 quid. It's much better value than it would have been. But yeah, it's a hard sell, and putting it up more after you've had the worst ever season at home and 4 goals all year, it's not good.
Now, Kev, you were that season where Rangers beat Palace 6-0 in the last game of the season and stayed up, and you know, there was very similar talk about that time about not letting it happen again. Can you just talk us through what that was like at the end of that game and what it was like going into that season? As Jerry Francis came, did he come in mid-season? Did Jerry come in mid-season?
Around October, November, we were like really in a sort of a bad state under Ray Harford. And to be fair, Jerry came back and got us going, brought a few players in, went maybe a little bit more direct. But Jerry was a legend at the time, so it gave the whole place a lift, you know, as a player and as an ex-manager. And then it got to that game, and the relief of winning and staying up was just massive. And then you go into the following season, you know, you got like you know, Jerry was an ex-Premiership manager, QPR, Tottenham, so he's sort of been there and done it. And then the following season, we had a decent season where we came 9th, 10th, 8th, 9th, around just above mid-table, and we had a good solid season and sort of turned the corner. And then I left, and then we got relegated. No, but I did leave, and then unfortunately, sort of the wheels come off that season, and I don't know. I wasn't there that season, but just the sheer relief of like, look, thank God QPR didn't go into the last game of the season against Bristol City,
Mm.
to win a game. I mean, that would have been like desperate, as in pressure. And I think there's more, there's pressure on the pitch, obviously, but in the stand when you're watching, because you can't control what's going on the pitch when you're in the stand. When you're on the pitch, you can sort of do something about it. So it's big pressure.
Yeah.
And anxiety, especially around them. And you do feel that as a player, the anxiety of the fans, if it starts going a bit wrong.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, this can't happen again. This cannot be allowed to happen again next season. Lessons have to be learned from what's gone on this season. I mean, I'm very optimistic about QPR, largely. And I think the last couple of years, it's been quite good fun being a QPR fan. I think there's been some good games. There's been some nice football. But I mean, after the Coventry game, that was it for me, where I really felt, gosh, this, my son asked me where Lincoln was and places like that. And it really brings it back to, I've never seen QPR play Lincoln City. And I hope I never, outside of a cup game, I hope I never have to. You know what I mean? It's pretty bad. But I mean, it has been a huge disappointing second half of the season. But there were, the first half of the season, there was some high points. So I mean, just for you, Kev, if you can cast your mind back, it feels about 20 years ago when things were good. But what was your high moment of the season?
Good question. So long ago. Well, perhaps the high point was, and I weren't there, but the Burnley winning that game, and I was just really shocked. I mean, that was one game where I thought we've got no chance. So to win that, and as soon as we won that game, I knew that we would stay up, because it was just sort of just out of the blue. Some good performance at the start of the season. Was it Middlesbrough at home? In the sun looked a good game. Is that right? Middlesbrough at home?
Yeah.
Yeah. High point, maybe 2-0 down against Sunderland, and you come back and the keeper scores scores a last minute equaliser. That's another high point. But I never thought. I remember watching QPR on October when we played Cardiff, and if you'd have told me that QPR would have finished 1 point above Cardiff on that night after watching that game, I would have said, you are off your head, mental, because we absolutely battered them, and I thought if they'd stayed up, they were the worst Championship team performance I've seen at QPR for a long time. And just to think that we 1 point ahead of them at the end of the season would have blown my mind.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because I was talking to Nick Godwin over BBC London. I bumped into him at Chelsea a couple of weeks ago, and he was asking what's going on at Rangers, and he turned around and said that along the lines of, "Oh, I did that game, the Millwall QPR game at the Den." And if someone had told me one team was pushing for the playoffs and the other team was sitting, near the bottom of the league, I wouldn't have said it was QPR. I wouldn't have said it was Millwall. And that sort of summed it up, really. It just, the kind of turnaround was ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, Jim, for you, what's stands out in your?
I think it was. It's really bittersweet. I think it was around the Reading game at home in October, where I was a bit sceptical. Then we got in Parland. We upgraded at fullback and we started playing a lot better. We got Parland layered in. And then I think it was the Reading game, and I just started to believe there might be something about this squad. We'd faced a bit of adversity in that game and come through it. Dykes won it with a penalty. We'd had a penalty turned down earlier in the game. The Cardiff game you're talking about, I remember us beating them 3-0, but not really thinking that we merited a 3-0 on that day. But I think it was the Reading game where I started to allow myself to believe that there might be something in this season. And finally, as QPR fans, we could dream a bit. that went well. I guess that was it. Before the dark times, before the Empire.
Yeah. I remember sitting on here, Kevin, saying that Rangers, there should be no one in this division that they should fear. And I think I even remember coming out and being all bullish because I've got them at 25-1 to go up.
I hope you've all these podcasts we've done, you've deleted them now. No one can come back and say, you said this, you said that.
Yeah. But it just goes to show that I know nothing really.
Oh,
But it was, I mean, the start of the season, it was good fun. I mean, I drove all the way up to Sunderland to cover that match, and there's a tube strike, and genuinely, that was the most bizarre ending to a football match I've ever seen. I mean, Ilias Chair scored an absolutely scream of a free kick, and then the bloke in front of me was doing the radio, and he flashed over quickly. Get back to Sunderland, goal at Sunderland. And they went, I don't care about Man United. The effing keeper scored. That was it. It was just this crazy. And then the Wi-Fi went down, and I couldn't actually. I was trying to tweet, see the Eng scored, and it was mad. It was crazy. It was a really hot, sunny day as well. The sun was out, and yeah. And then that Watford day, that was a good day as well. That was
I forgot about that. I was at that game. That was very good.
Memorable day. So it's been I think that's what's been really hard for everyone.
I remember the Wigan game as well, thinking we hadn't played well, and they were sort of probably maybe a little bit better than us on the day, and we ended up winning 2-0 and scoring 2 set pieces, 2 corners. And when you do that, you're all thinking, do you know what? We ain't played well.
Yeah,
but we're finding a way to win. Is this going to be a good season? How wrong I was.
Yeah. I mean, I'd list the lows, but there's too many to mention. You know,
I should say we're only laughing because I think otherwise we'd all be in bits, and that would be an incredibly depressing podcast. But you know, you look back and you laugh about it. Like, God, it hurts. You're just like, why did we do this? I'd love to sort of do a reasons to be cheerful podcast. Like, let's look for positives, but like, might be quite short.
Yeah, but well, gents, well, thank you very much for your time. And well, as I mentioned at the start, this is our last pod of the season. But so I just really wanted to thank everyone who's watched on YouTube or downloading, listening on Spotify, iTunes, or SoundCloud, and really helped us grow. You know, some of the, honestly, generally the kind comments I've received from people when I've been at the stadium or around Shepherd's Bush, you know, they really appreciate it and very humbling. But, you know, I'd like to thank Dan Bennett, once at his parish, because who's now praying for Neil Critchley to return to Blackpool. You know, it was Dan who did so much of the grunt work to get this pod up and running before he buggered off and left me to make some ham-fisted attempt to try and host it. But Kevin, mate, I know you're a really busy man, but thank you to continuing to add your wise contributions. Thank you, Jim, and all the guests who've been on this year, like Paul Stokes, Ben Koski, John Crowley in particular. I'd also like to thank those who left comments on YouTube, both good and bad, like the fellow who claimed I must have learnt my media skills off the side of a pack of cornflakes. Well, I'll have you know, it was actually a variety pack size of Ricicles. So, but I've met watchers of this podcast in the most random of places. You know, an American golf store in Guildford one Sunday morning, and a fellow who got off a train at a really busy Waterloo station in the middle of rush hour, and they both just wanted to talk about QPR. So it's, but you know, a wiser man than me once said that, you know, QPR are truly a big little club, and he's not wrong there. There really are QPR fans everywhere, and you know, I lived in Australia for 10 years, and I can attest to that. You know, no matter where you are in the world, you'll bump into a Rangers fan. I've even done it in a deserted pub in Vietnam, where it was me and a cab driver from Chiswick who took great exception to asking him when he walked in if he was Arsenal. And we then watched QPR lose to a blatantly offside goal by some fella called Mikel Arteta.
Well, I just say though, I was in Miami a couple of weeks ago, and I went to an Italian restaurant in Miami. I ended up chatting to one of the owners, and his co-owner was a QPR fan. So unbelievable.
There you go.
Yeah. Can I add one thing? Mark Dugan, a mate of mine and yours, is in Japan right now and met up with the QPR Japan fan group out there with Yuki, who's a top man. So we're everywhere. We're massive, aren't we?
Yeah. You know, and it has been, you know, it's been a really rubbish last 6 months, you know, with Fulham and Brentford trying to lord it as well. It's not easy for QPR fans, but you know, and frankly, the team doesn't really deserve the support they received this year. But I have to say, on West London Sport, we do numbers and stories and videos that truly dwarf both those clubs, and it just goes to show that even when things aren't great, the interest in QPR never fades. And you know, it is a proper football club, you know, good and bad. And you know, there's a lot of really good people that work at QPR that, you know, aren't playing staff. There's a lot of good people behind the scenes, and you know, I'm generally really happy that, you know, for the obvious reasons they stayed up, but people would have lost their jobs if the team had got relegated. And, you know, good people in the community department and box office and all sorts of places like that, you know, hospitality. There's, you know, real good people. So, you know, let's all try and enjoy the summer, you know, forget about football if we can. And, you know, let's hopefully hear to a much better 2023-24 campaign. So enjoy your summer, and we'll see you at the start of next season.